state agency wear body cameras and keep them on full time. I'm the first that created a whole division and approach that actually became a national model.
안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하고 있는 동상왕코입니다. 지금 아침 10시가 아직 안 됐어요. 오늘은 쉬는 날입니다. 저녁에 약속이 있어서 일단 저녁에 나가야 되고, 오늘 미용실을 갈까 말까 고민이 되네요. 염색을 할까 말까, 일요일날 갈까 말까. 운동 먼저 하고 생각하겠습니다. 오늘도 장마 시작입니다, 여러분. 일단 운동부터 하겠습니다.
Members of the Senate, this is a time for reform and it's a time for leaders to step up and be in a position where they can actually lead.
Senator Kamala Harris, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
스쿼트도 하고.
Thank
Just
you.
ahead, protesters demanding the removal of Confederate statues. We'll talk about it with Senator Conservative Mitch Landrieu, former mayor of New Orleans, who removed 4 Confederate statues while the mayor.
Coronavirus is affecting the entire country, the world. Are we ready? In the beginning of outbreaks like this, nobody knows what's happening. We're determined to keep reporting the story. Because that's what worries the American people. We're ready for it. These are the moments where our humanity really does shine through. That's the hardest part.
It's heart-wrenching.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN.
These tragedies have been occurring over and over again for years. 50 years ago, my father was demonstrating with sanitation workers over 50 years. And they have signs saying, I'm a man. Black Lives today have signs 52 years later saying, Black Lives Matter. And not just blacks, whites, young people, older people, Latino and Hispanics. Others have joined because they see this injustice that exists in this country. And people are not just crying out, people are saying change must occur now. I only hope our elected officials' ears are open and eyes are open and that movement takes place right away. The time is now. There's nothing more powerful in all the world than an idea whose time has come.
와, 몸이
So tell me, how have you been working out and keeping in shape at home? Do you want me to show you? Yes, I do. Okay. This is the gym. Honestly, I've been doing a lot of body weight stuff, a lot of core. I've been using the bike trainer. I feel like dancing is a really good way to exercise and also express yourself, and it's good for your soul. Showing you the guitar. Is there something you've been working on at the moment? I've been wanting to learn Blinding Lights by The Weeknd. It's one of my favorite songs right now. Thank you, that was so lovely. I hope the weekend is watching and paying attention. No, I hope he's mad.
The Royal Oak by Audemars Piguet is the world's first stainless steel luxury sports watch.
Famous watch designer Gerald Genta drew inspiration from a deep-sea diver's helmet, which had an octagonal shape as well as riveted screws around the design.
It sold for around $3,000 when it was first released in 1972. And you know, this was considered both by the industry and by the general watch buying public as just a piece of inexplicable insanity. You know, you just didn't charge that for a stainless steel watch. And not only did they not go out of business, it has gone on to become the single most important watch commercially and aesthetically for Audemars Piguet. They're avidly collected. Yeah, they are icons of modern watch design. It's gone on to become one of the most successful wristwatches of all time.
I'm Isa Suarez in London, and this is CNN.
Earlier tonight, President Trump told the crowd in Arizona that he would defend statues of Americans like Washington and Jefferson for being torn down. Left unmentioned by the president was the fact that many of the statues protesters are wanting to remove are Confederate leaders like Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis. Joining me now to discuss it is Mitch Landrieu, not only a CNN contributor, but while mayor of New Orleans 3 years ago, led the effort to remove statues of Lee, Davis, and 2 more in his city. Also joining us is Julian Hayter, author, historian, and associate professor of leadership studies at the University of Richmond in Virginia. Mayor Landrieu, you were front and center on this. You and I, actually, you and Professor Hayter were both in a piece I did for 60 Minutes on this subject. Talk about your thought process on the removal and how you see it now.
Well, a couple of things. When we began, we were focused on the Confederate monuments. There are over 1,700 of them that dot the landscape in mostly the South. They were put up between 1890 and 1920, and then jumped forward a couple of years. They took a break, and then they put a bunch of them up in the 1950s. These statues were put up to revere people who fought against the United States of America in the Civil War for the purpose of preserving slavery. And our position was that was inappropriate. They were put up to send a message. They were put up in places of reverence. And although they should be remembered, my position is they shouldn't be revered. Now, as soon as we started doing that, the folks that wanted them up said, oh, contextualize them, don't take them down, put a little plaque up. Oh, and by the way, we can't start because we don't know where we're going to stop. And it's always that argument that they use that, you know, it's going to come to taking down Lincoln and Jefferson and not stay focused on the central issue of white supremacy as it relates to the Confederate monuments. And that's, of course, what we're going through as we speak.
And Professor Hayter, you know, contextualizing is one thing that has been discussed a lot. But I think what a lot of people don't realize, and we're seeing the Roosevelt statue, which is outside the Museum of Natural History in New York. There's now talk for removing that, given its depiction. But just on the Confederate monuments, can you talk a little bit about the history of why they were built and when? Because it's not as if it was done in the heat of the Civil War. This was done afterward to kind of rewrite history.
Right. These monuments, it takes several decades for these monuments to emerge. And as Mr. Landrieu stated, it really is a propaganda campaign designed to rewrite the history of the Civil War and slavery. But it's also meant to rationalize the rise of racial apartheid that characterized Jim Crow segregation. In many ways, attempt to clean the South's image up in the court of public opinion by telling a story that purports slavery was a benign institution, that African Americans were happy slaves and unprepared for freedom, and that the Confederacy was a noble cause. And in many instances, in most instances, if not all of them, these statues are a reclamation of public space in the name of white supremacy.
So, Professor Hayter, where do you think, I'm wondering what you make of, you know, it seems like the debate has now moved. There's a lot of people who are saying, you know, forget about, you know, putting in a context. Let's just put them somewhere else.
I think if these statues are warehoused, it's a wasted opportunity to actually deal with the narrative of the lost cause. I think people are formulating political solutions to the problem of Confederate revisionism. The path forward, however, I think will require educational tools. You can't have reconciliation without recognition. These are, for many people, these statues represent institutional problems, and I think tearing them down won't make our tortured racial history go away. We're going to have to deal with not merely the story of the lost cause, but what was the result of what these statues sent to entrench in terms of things like Jim Crow segregation. They paved the road for how we got to now.
Mayor Landrieu, what do you make of that?
Well, I love the professor. I disagree with him just a little bit. I don't agree that taking them down erases history. I think it makes room for our total history.
I don't either.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with him that the most important thing is what we do going forward. And if we just take them down and we don't deal with what they represent and the idea of them, and that we don't have a moment of acknowledgement, we can't move towards reconciliation. So I think he's exactly right about that part, because there has to be a reckoning in the country. But everybody will notice that as soon as we start getting locked in on the Confederate monuments, everybody wants to take your eye off the ball and take you to Washington, Jefferson, and to Grant, and they don't want to stay focused on this very important and singular time in our history when people tried to rewrite it and tell a historical lie. So what I said to the people of New Orleans, and with their blessing and their help, said, look, let's deal with this issue now. Let's foursquare look at where it is that we came from, where we want to go, and let's begin to deal with institutional bias that you now see manifesting itself in police departments. You can see it manifesting itself in the consequences of COVID, et cetera, et cetera. The stories go on, but you need to get to the root of it, and the professor is exactly right. Unless you get underneath it, then if you just take the monuments down, and that's all that we do, we will have missed a great opportunity for our country.
Professor Hader, I've been looking at videos I've worked in South Africa in the days leading up to the election of Mandela and the years leading up to it, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and which was an extraordinary thing. There's lots of criticism about it as well, and some faults that it had. But it's incredible to see a society which, there's plenty of reasons to have animosity toward, by people who were oppressed for generations. And that society has been able to move forward and kind of reinvent themselves in an extraordinary way. I don't know that something like that would work here, but it's just interesting to look at how South Africa did it.
Yeah, I think the South Africans were willing to put themselves on the proverbial sofa and deal with the country's tortured racial history. By the way, I think that Afrikaner memory isn't that dissimilar to the memory of the Confederacy. It's much grounded in mythology as it is in actual history. And I think the fact that they were willing to come to the proverbial table and have a discussion about what transpired during the apartheid regime was a critical step in the reconciliation that characterized that country's ability to move forward after the demise of that terrible regime.
Yeah. Julian Hader, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Mayor Mitchell-Andrew as well. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Still ahead, Atlanta to gather to remember Rayshard Brooks, shot and killed by police. We'll be right back.
To open doors, to develop contacts, and to unlock secrets, it takes trust.
It was the first time he really came out of his shell in front of the camera.
Trust that you'll listen.
It's so great that you're here today. Just highlights people making a difference.
That you'll be honest. I don't want to pry, but what sort of conversations do you have with them? Trust that you'll be accurate and you'll be fair.
It was an unprecedented move, very eerie. All the roads had been closed off. Describe the scene that you arrived to.
The Apache attack helicopter. This is what Captain Wales has been flying.
What do you do with Crimea?
This is Europe's problem. Do you want talks with them? What is the point of talking on?
We continue to monitor a government in crisis.
This was the Duchess's first news interview. Rare access indeed.
That's what it's about.
Max Foster, CNN.
I would always recommend that we are listening to our employees and ask them. And all the surveys we are doing amongst our own employees, but also amongst our clients' employees, shows that in the high 80s, they respond that they would like to get back into an office on a regular basis. It will depend on the individual company, and there may be some who will reduce their office footprint, but others will have to enlarge their office footprint. Not only because of social distancing now, but longer term, people want to have a little bit more space around them. At the moment, we are in the middle of the pandemic, and we are trying to help our clients to keep their employees safe and well. And whether after that pandemic there will be a massive reduction in the need of their workspace in offices is still very much an open question.
As the global economy adjusts to life in lockdown, many businesses are seeking ways to support the fight against COVID-19. With the UK still battling the effects of the virus, British clothing brand ASOS has launched a range of charity t-shirts. It says it will donate profits to charities supporting local National Health Service providers. Seniors are among the worst affected by the virus. Meal box delivery company Freshly has partnered with Nestle to donate $500,000 to Meals on Wheels America, which delivers food to older adults across the U.S. And with public health now more important than ever, Colgate-Palmolive is donating $20 million in health and hygiene products to community organizations worldwide. It is also donating another 25 million bars of soap with packaging that promotes hand washing. For more stories on the people making a difference and to find out how you can impact your world, go to cnn.com/impact.
Adrian Canobolo outside London, and this is CNN.
Let's check with Chris, see what he's working on for Cuomo Prime Time. Chris?
Trying to get everybody on the same page, Coop, just in terms of you got to look past D.C. for leadership in the form of the president, and we have to understand the reality of where we are with the pandemic right now, and that's the important thing. So we're going to bring in the former CDC director. We're going to talk about what the path is forward for us to get to a better place, what the obstacles are. We're going to take on the mayor of Yuma, Arizona. How do you agree that masks work, but you decide to vote against mandating them for your own city? Because it's a question of liberty. Let's test that argument tonight. We need to, because that argument is spreading through the fringe right as fast as the virus. I also have Ken Burns on tonight. He is AC 360 worthy guest, and he's going to come on tonight to talk about the statue. What do the symbols mean? What is the right place to draw the line? Is there a too far? Is there a too much emphasis on symbolism? Can that maybe frustrate bigger efforts? True
series on Civil War was fantastic. And all the stuff he does. Cool. Chris, look forward to seeing you just about 4 minutes from now. Coming up next for us, how Rayshard Brooks was remembered in the church where the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. once preached.
Wherever you are in the world, Lotte is always close to you. Lotte will be with you throughout the world until the name Lotte is synonymous with friendship. Your lifetime friend, Lotte.
물 먹고 오겠습니다. 아유.
Host of CNN's First Move. I speak with newsmakers.
Do you think we're still in a bull market?
We need the world to keep pace with technology.
Risk takers?
What about the prospect of an IPO, or is it too soon?
And the ultimate game changers.
How do you find valuable assets to buy?
The game changes constantly.
Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley tonight on CNN.
Always at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. And we try very hard to get both of those. And I want to hear authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent about a subject who will make you smarter, move you, kind of challenge your mind or move your heart, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria GPS, Sunday on CNN.
I'm Ivan Watson in Hong Kong, and this is CNN.
11 days after he was shot and killed by an Atlanta police officer, Rayshard Brooks was laid to rest. The funeral was held at the city's historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, where the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. once preached. Dr. King's daughter, the Reverend Bernice A. King, said she knew the pain of growing up without a father. Rayshard Brooks' life matters, she said, and he should have been able to live to enjoy his family and watch his kids grow into adults. Reverend King added that it was especially troubling that Brooks was killed in a city that's home, as she described it, civil and human rights. Black Mecca, she called it. He leaves a widow, 3 young daughters, and a 13-year-old stepson. The officer who killed him is in jail, charged with felony murder. The other officer involved has been charged with aggravated assault. The news continues. I'm going to hand things over to Chris for Cuomo Prime Time. Chris?
All right, thank you, Anderson, and thank you for helping us remember the right things the right way. I am Chris Cuomo. Welcome to Prime Time. Look, we have to be on the same page about reality. The pandemic will be with us for a while, period. Every place that ignores that reality and the recommended masks and measures will suffer. We see it time and again. We have to hear and accept this and act on it, because you and I, we are the key. You have to take care of yourself, and by doing that, I thank you, because it helps protect me and my family. Forget Trump. He does not want what the rest of us must want right now with this pandemic. Believe who he has shown you he is for the 18th time. Of course he lies about testing and invites people to gather at their own peril. He values praise over your protection. In Arizona, where cases are popping, he didn't even talk about it. Look, of course Trump continues to call COVID-19 the Kung flu. He is a dictator who plays to bigotry. He wants you to blame the Chinese and see them as an other. That's what and who he is. Take it from someone who's known him most of my adult life. That's who he's always been. If anyone wants this country to come close to its promise, forget about me needing to call out the obvious. You must reject the bigotry. You must demand that a president get this poison, us versus them, out of his mendacity-ridden maw. There is no debate.
몇 분 했죠?
He is a Democrat.
23분.
That's not an argument. It is a fact. Deny, lie.
오늘은 쉬는 날이니까 30분 꽉꽉 채워서 하고 싶습니다. 하겠다는 얘기 아니고 하고 싶습니다.
His plan is simple.
미용실 가야 되나?
Divide us and conquer a second term. If you do not like him or that, don't vote for him. That's your choice. But know this, if you do support him, you own all of what he says and does. He put into a wall that was grossly oversold as a fix for immigration and refused to do the things he could have early on, and said all the worst things he could to expose more of us to this virus. You own that. There is no question he could have done more and better and chose not to. And we are all paying the price. Period. It is not an opinion. And if you need the reality of who he is, proven to you once again, that he is all about the me and forget about the we, here.
When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people, you're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
No one who gives a rat's ass about anyone else asks for less testing in a pandemic. Okay? The only reason to do something as stupid as that is to minimize what you and I know about the spread. And then, Miss I'll Never Lie to You said this.
It was a
이렇게 돼 있으면 누가 이거 입고 덥다 그러겠어요?
그러니까요.
누가 이거 입고 답답하다 그러겠어요? 원단의 신축성은 없어요. 근데 조직 자체가 되게 부들부들하고 그래서 살짝살짝 텐션이 있나 느끼실 정도로 얘를 주름을 살짝 잡아도 보죠. 그쵸. 이것도 신경 안 썼었어요. 자, 이거는 입어보셔야 됩니다.
맞아요.
포장 상태 예쁘게 해서 드릴 테니까 입어보시고
네.
자, 컬러를 다시 한 번만 좀
네.
여성님부터 소개해드릴까요?
그러니까요. 고객님,
뭐야?
네이비인지 레드인지를
선물이가
선택해주세요.
리모컨
그러니까 둘 다 예뻐서 고민은 좀 되실 것 같아요. 그러면 저희가 블랙 색상의 블라우스가 한 벌이
In another way, you find out where the cases
Ah.
That doesn't even make sense either. What he meant to say was, it tells you how many cases there are. That's good, right? Tells you where they are. That's good, right? So what's the other edge? It's that it's bad for him because it shows there are more cases, and he wants you to believe that COVID's no big thing. So who's lying? Both of them. He never said that to anyone about reducing the testing, but he wasn't joking. He wasn't sarcastic. He was being cynical. He believes that he can win by making you angry and by being an agent for your outrage. Look, he is the President of the United States. His words and actions demand exposure, if only out of respect for the office. But he is not about getting us to a better place on this pandemic. You have to know that by now. Thank God, some on his team are. That's why he wants the glow of Fauci to illuminate his lackluster efforts and toxic talk. You saw his tweet. It's been all over the place, right? First, he wasn't sure about Fauci. Put up the tweet. First, he wasn't sure about Fauci, right? Remember that? There was a little bit of trash talk about Tony Fauci. Maybe he's on the outs. Remember that? And then what did the Trumpers do? They responded by threatening the man, going after his family. Because that's what Trumpers want to do when stoked to anger by Trump. But now, Tony Fauci, and rightly so, who's been straight with you, who's been honest, who's been cautious, it's got high ratings. So the president says, well, then I should too. Be nice to me. No. No, you don't get what Tony Fauci gets. Why? Because you don't say what Tony Fauci says. You make things up. You say stupid things about what you should drink and what can end this and the magic. And you put them on the spot and you embarrass them and then you hide them because you don't like what they say. Seen Tony Fauci on this show anytime recently? You think it's a coincidence that you don't see Dr. Birx? That you don't see the heads of the agencies? That this is the only time in recent American history where the people who are in charge of dealing with something that affects all of us are kept from? The CDC director says this virus has brought our nation to its knees. You heard Trump say that? That's why you don't see so much of the CDC director. So now that we know the reality, now that there can be no hiding from it, what do we do about it? That's the right question for us to start on. And we have a great person to help answer it. Dr. Thomas Friedman. He was the head of the CDC. He understands this. Thank you very much for being on the show, Doc, as always. The idea, I'm not going to...
이거 10개만 하고 끝내겠습니다.
Are you sure it's bad? Are people really still getting sick? We don't play stupid here. People know that we have a problem.
20개.
The question is, are we able to put this behind us anytime soon as a country? Yes or no? And if yes, how soon?
But the virus is still out there. We may be sick and tired of staying home, but the virus is not tired of making us sick. You really have to compare the U.S. with other countries around the world. In my organization, we work all around the world, and the U.S. response is just lagging. We're not doing what we need to do to be distant. We're not across the country scaling up contact tracing as effectively.